We're talking about relationships.
Our problem is, instead of us following our intuition, because so many of us are insecure, have low self-esteem, have a desire to be in the presence of a man for whatever reason, we'll ignore those yellow flags, that intuition, just to have somebody take us out to dinner, just to go to a movie.
The guy took me to dinner, so after he bought me dinner, he felt as though he was entitled.
Entitled.
See, that's the word I'm going to use, entitled. So what happened is, as a result, I needed to have my own money to afford my own dinner if I needed it. And then in some situations, women will actually treat and pay for these dinners to have control on a relationship. Because once you're paying the bill yourself, you can actually tell them, you can go to, you know, where. You listen to the Shed Kitchen. It is now 6:28, and I'm Renee McBride-Williams.
And I'm Karen Dunn.
And we are talking about relationships.
Yes.
We spoke to Miss Sheila Harper, who talked about her program to try to steer people away from violence and teenagers or
educate and inform about dating violence.
Yeah, which she said between the ages of 16 and 24 is increased among African Americans. This is one of the things that we don't need. And we have Elder Bernard, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing?
Here, fine. And I think we have
Miss Shana Rudd.
Miss Shana Rudd here in our studios. And are we listening also to Kevin?
Yeah, Brother Kevin Sheath.
We're talking about relationships. I came from an era where men were a bit misogynistic, you know, meaning that they felt as though women should be told what to do. Let me just put it mildly. And females were an extension of their husbands, not an individual, but just some of the extra that we've heard about. So many times you have women who were at home, who brought their money home after work and gave it to their husbands. And that husband, in many cases, was abusive to the children. They called it discipline. You know, and then often the wives were also neglected and abused in many ways that today we call it that. Then it was called putting a stern hand in my house. I pay the bills and you do what I say. So we have this generation where women who still say, don't speak up when your man's talking, be quiet, don't talk over him. We still have so many cultures who are still saying that it's okay to walk behind him and it's all right, you know.
Don't forget that there's also the reverse, where men are treated like that.
Yeah, that's
then
true.
And now.
Yeah, that's true.
It's gotten worse with the women, right?
Yeah, and so we're at a point where I think mass media has played a tremendous role in changing our culture, down from the little kid to the grown-up, you know. And so we were talking about the science, and when we talked to Sister Harper earlier, she was talking about the name calling, the things that we are commonly accustomed to hearing. That
the flags, the red flags.
The red flags. But there's yellow flags, just like this appointment. You're supposed to see some caution, you know. And I have experienced some of that stuff online when I was 8. You know, things that demands people make of you, or questions they ask you that might be inappropriate for a first date.
Yeah.
You know, and I found some stuff to be really, you know, outlandish. You know, and then those were my yellow flags that say, well, if this guy is asking me what am I doing with my personal business, it has nothing to do with the fact that he never even asked me what my last name is.
Right.
Well, he hasn't even asked me what my middle name is, or what's my birth sign. You know, he's going right now.
No, that's a general thing.
Right. So I want to know from all of you, what do you consider? And we have a young lady here.
Yes.
What do you consider to be some of the yellow flags? Not the red ones, but the
Yellow. I think that women are given a gift that we just silence all the time, and that's our intuition. And I think that silent voice to let you know something is not okay. They're smiling, they look good, they're making me laugh, but there's something inside of me that says there's something off here. Our problem is, instead of us following our intuition, because so many of us are insecure, have low self-esteem, have a desire to be in the presence of a man for whatever reason, we'll ignore those yellow flags, that intuition, just to have somebody take us out to dinner, just to go to a movie, and then after a few movies and after a few dinners, there's a soul tie. There's an attachment there with the person that you can't even shake, and then before long you're in a relationship, you're in bed with them and everything else. So I think the first thing is that intuition. I know I've been in, unfortunately, 2 abusive relationships. I'm 26. The first one was when I was 17. The second one was when I was 22. Both of those men, what they had in common was a need to isolate me from everybody that celebrated me. And I didn't even realize it in the beginning. But any friend who was encouraging me or who had well words to say, very quickly, they kind of would have negative things to say about those people. Even negative things to say about my mother. Because and had a problem with the relationship, any positive relationship I had. So to me, that was one of the yellow, because it seemed, and with reason, they would be like, well, you know, you're just a mama's girl. It's time to stand up and be a woman. Or your friend doesn't support me. Your friend want me. Instead of me stepping back and going, I've known my mama my whole life, and I've known this friend longer than you, that need to be in a relationship, that desire, kind of that craving outweighed those relationships that I've had forever, and I would just step forward and be with the person. So a lot of these, and even with women, a lot of us, we know how to disguise our mess. And we get in these relationships with these men, and our major thing is to even have somebody control, because we've been controlled. We have to pay attention to these inner signals.
Right.
And in order to do that, you got to be in tune with yourself. So if you're not in tune with
Yes,
yourself,
that's
True.
true.
Yes,
And there
that's
are
excellent.
voices
Yeah.
and
That's
God
wonderful.
isn't so far away from us. He's
See?
with us.
That's
And He will tell you, there's something wrong here.
there's something
Pay
off.
attention.
Or like,
Right.
see that? You see that?
Yeah.
Right. Did you
That's
see
true.
that?
Did you see that? I got some of that. All right now.
You know, and that's true. Because I'll talk about the time I was dating. I've been married now for about 12 years, but I was dating for a long, long period of time. I remember I dated a guy who was all right. He had a life of his own. People would just put him on a pedestal. He was doing real good. I was doing good. Then it got to the point he was waiting for me after work.
See?
Then he was waiting for me out
you?
front of my house. and then wherever I went, I was like, I said to him, aren't you supposed to be in such and such a place?
Don't you?
Well, his answer was, you have a problem with that?
Mm.
You know, as if, is there some reason why you have a problem why I'm not where you think I'm at? But I realized, let me say this, I'm going to step out on this, that some of those men I chose were men who were similar to my father.
Well, there you go. Now we're talking.
Yeah, I have to say that. You know, my father's now deceased, God bless him. And I wouldn't change my parents for all tea in China. But I had to realize where that came from. You know, I said, why would I choose men
That's right.
who were possessive?
That's what you knew.
And
That's what
because
you
I remember my father was always the type of man that says, no, you can't wear that. No, you can't do this. I'm going to wait outside in front of the uptown when that shit was so, you know, my father was like that. So I thought all guys were like that.
It was okay.
To show their love.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I didn't come up in a house when we sat on dad's lap and after you were 5 years old, that was at 4 or 5. You didn't go out with uncle somebody on your own.
Right.
That kind of stuff. That's just how it was.
Yeah.
So to us, love was always embraced with a bit of control.
Yeah.
You know, I love you, so be home at 9 o'clock. So if you meet a man who tells you, I want you in the house at 9 o'clock, you have to make sure you're on the right page to know that this is dad,
That
this is a
control with it,
boyfriend.
right,
You know,
right.
there's two different things. But for a while, I was choosing those kind of people.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm saying to a lot of young ladies today, be mindful of the person that you're dealing with, because it took me a long time to not be able to make the connection with the dots to say that this was love.
Yeah.
So, and some women Or still doing it,
Still.
whatever. And we talked to a lady whose daughter lost her life as a result of a relationship that she had. Now we have a situation in our culture. What do guys do when they meet women who are abusive? We're looking at maybe two different issues. One could be that when we're talking about homosexuality, it might be a certain way that you feel threatened, maybe by how that female associates or has a relationship with you. And the other one could be one of those situations where times have changed, that's what they say. But I'm just going to go to say something I talked about earlier, my dating experience. I dated a guy who, I just dated a lot because I was bad. So the guy took me to dinner. So after he bought me dinner, he felt as though he was entitled.
Entitled.
See, that's the word I'm going to use, entitled. So what happened is, as a result, I needed to have my own money to afford my own dinner if I needed it. And then in some situations, women will actually treat and pay for those dinners to have control on the relationship. Because once you're paying the bill yourself, you can actually tell them, you can go to, where. So, these red flags, these yellow flags are all good ones. But where does that lead relationships? Elder, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think that there's some validity to what he's saying? Or,
He's absolutely right. I think what it is some women not knowing who they are. And it does result in not having fathers around to teach them who they are early on. And it's very critical because it needs to be a foundation laid. Because, especially with fathers today, that there are a lot of fathers that have really dropped the ball, so to speak.
oh yeah, they have.
And it breaks my heart a lot of times because it just gives them no direction at all.
None.
They don't know who they are, and the first thing smoking coming their way, they gravitate to it. So then what he portrays to them and introduces to them, they think that's who they're supposed to intersect.
Yeah, okay.
So now that leads to relationships just really drifting. Like you were saying about going out, paying the bill, and doing this, and I owe you this and I owe you that. That's why vision is so important. To sit down and to discuss compatibility.
Exactly.
So that we can relate. And relate in the way that we need to relate.
Well, we have ladies who are ready to
so,
talk.
so that we can have some kind of direction.
And this is one of the things that we wanted, was some kind of dialogue.
Yeah.
Because I want to give you an opportunity to say what you're going to say.
Just the teacher in me comes out. So why aren't the fathers there? And why is there such a rift in the black community? So I'm teaching my students right now on Sir Willie Lynch. We know the British slave owner from the 16th century, who wrote the Willie Lynch letters. And if you have not read the Willie Lynch letters, black people, read them now.
Yes.
So in the Willie Lynch letters, he says that his goal is to turn the black man against the black woman, to make the black woman act like the black man, to make her psychologically frozen and aggressive, and to make the black man act like the black woman.
And that
So-
actually is happening.
And it's happening.
That's
That
right.
was the plan worked. I tell my students that. So here we are. We have women who are more aggressive, who, I'm sorry, my father did not raise me. My mother worked 3 jobs. All I ever saw growing up was a woman hustling, and she became psychologically frozen and hard. Just now, my mother and I are beginning to have a woman relationship where I can see her as a woman who is softening up, but because of the abuse and because the black man was not in his place, she learned to be the man.
That's right.
And then what you
That's
find to be so amazing as that considered to be the scarlet women, the women in red, and so forth and so on, all the ones that would capture the attentions of the males, and you know, most of these guys actually say bees and you hear all this stuff and they mistreat them.
Right.
But women who are worthy of respect,
See?
educated and sharing and so forth and so on, they're the ones that guys are really turning off the off button.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to get involved. They can actually be in relationships and there's still no communication.
Because it's a challenge. It challenges the man to man up.
Right.
I have a t-shirt from Nike that says man up on it. You man up, and I like the fact that women do that because it reveals to the man that, look, this ain't gonna be no cakewalk.
Right.
You're not just gonna come and walk over me it ain't gonna be all gratification. You know, treat me like who I need to be treated. I'm a woman. I'm creating in God's image. I am somebody. So what you saying is what you gonna get, and men ain't used to seeing that, especially in this day and time.
That's right. Nay knows. That's the truth. I'm gonna tell you that. Let's go ahead, Karen.
I've had one thought, even before the beginning of the conversation, that I want to address as possibly being a solution. In our culture, unfortunately, the way we date, I believe, is just so horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes, I agree.
Right.
I agree.
We
and
all
then-
agree on that?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
we all
And
agree.
that in the way this culture dates, it says, and invisibly says, well, once you sleep with someone, then you make that work. And so you find people going through like this whole trail of drifting, like you said, and not knowing identity, and they're drifting, and it never really works. So they go to counseling, and they're just their companionship relationship, not marriage, but companionship relationship, to make that work. I'm wondering if there's a way we can start teaching people or instituting, when it doesn't work, those are your signs to leave. So you don't get abused. So you don't,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
different than marriage,
It's
where
actually
you're like, we're committed to this, we're gonna work this out no matter what.
Right.
You know, we don't do that. It's
But
like,
even
it
no
didn't
matter what doesn't exist anymore.
yeah,
You know,
or like when you were talking about, dating people dating men or women because they seem to have all the things you should
Yeah, the
to
stereotypes,
want. Like they have
right.
a nice car and they
Right.
look well,
Right.
but their mind is not well.
Especially internally.
Right, and so when you see that it's okay to walk away from that. Like those are
Yeah.
your clues. That, to me, that would be a solution to
And
teach.
you know what, that's true,
Yes,
because
yes.
just for example, we want to revisit this again in
Yes.
another one of our shows,
Yes.
but they did a special on Unsung on David Ruffin.
I missed it. I fell asleep.
And they talked about
TV
David
already?
Ruffin, about how abusive he was to Tammy Terrell, and they talked to many of his women, well, his other wife and his children, how he seemed to be bipolar.
Yeah.
He compared himself to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Wow.
But one of the things that came out eventually, that he never talked much about his home life. Come to find out, he was whipped by his father.
See?
You know, he abused by his father. I'm not gonna say it was sexual. It was more of just a control thing. He got whipped with belts. They said belts that were braided.
And the
know,
sexual abuse is something that happens to men
To
more
men,
than they say.
Yeah, and they
And
don't.
that is where their hostility comes from for them.
Yeah, and because it has a lot to do with their masculinity. You know, because we're talking about homophobics and a whole lot of different
Goes back to
stuff.
identity.
People really don't understand what's going on,
Right.
and they don't have anyone to share that with. You know, so women have a tendency to be able to share certain things, because they had the same thing on last night about Sheila E. being sexually abused at 5 years old. But she stepped out.
It's
on
socially
that.
acceptable for women.
Right,
It's still a
right.
stigma for men.
So we're talking about solutions, and one of the things is we engage in conversation.
Yes.
That's right.
And I think the people who changed it should be put back in the responsibility of accountability, especially when it comes to media. These rappers, Lil Wayne,
Yeah.
Nelly, even LL, and what's Beyonce's husband's name?
Jay-Z.
Jay-Z. Yeah.
He is at least wearing suits now. You know,
Trying
and
to
I
look
would,
the part.
yeah, I would like to see more people understand their biographies, because some of these guys did go to college. They did graduate from high school. Hello,
Right.
you
But
know,
if they-
and,
Right.
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
But even if those who create so-called entertainment for the media, if they don't get it together, then because the bigger picture is they can entertain, but there's someone producing, there's someone who owns the airtime that they have to buy, so that things that they put together can be seen. There should be an accountability factor for the media, those who produce and who have television and can put things over the airways, something that may have to be put in the FCC as guidelines, because you can't, it's sad, but in this culture you cannot expect people who are making a whole lot of money, who will never be broke another day in their life, you cannot convince them anyway that they shouldn't make more money. You don't have to do this to make more money.
Right.
You know,
Right.
someone needs to be holding the media moguls accountable, not just the music ones.
Well, that's true, but people have to at least stand up enough to speak out. We need people to maybe write more articles or talk to youth as you do.
Yeah.
And have just a constant, continuous dialogue on what's going on in relationships, because it first has to start with yourself.
Yes.
You
That's
have to
excellent.
say, there is something wrong, something I need to change about me. And I'm not saying that Nene did that, you know, but I had to.
Yeah.
Because I realized that the things were happening to me wasn't all their fault. I had to accept some responsibility of the things that was going on in my life.
This is true.
You know, I said, so if it's not working, there's a reason for that. And I'm thinking people who I know that we're not gonna make it in advance. We set ourselves up for failure many times.
Yes.
You know, you say, I'm gonna deal with this guy, because you actually say to yourself in that voice, I know it's not gonna work, but I'm gonna date them anyway. You already know it's not
You
gonna
know
work.
it.
Yeah.
And you're gonna keep going anyway.
And you think you can change them, and you see who they have the potential to be, but we gotta do, I'm sorry, we think we can change them, and we see the potential, oh, maybe in a couple years, after I mold them under my tutelage, they will become who I love and have always dreamed of, but deal in reality.
And guys are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
As he just said, that, you know, some of the women, that they outwardly show affection for each other. Yeah, but suppose that girl said, but Boo loves me because he buys me steaks and pizza. I love Boo. He deserves it. So what about that kind of stuff? Or Boo, he knows all the latest raps by now.
And
She needs a transformation of her mind.
that's what I was getting ready to say, like, you can't, I mean, what you're saying is excellent, but if like a young lady or a woman is not solid in herself, she's not going to demand a ring, because she's too afraid that in demanding a ring, she's gonna scare him away.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a lot of baby mamas dramas. Is that how they say it? Yeah, because I'm listening, I saw something the other day where this guy actually had 2 other kids. I don't know how this goes. It's something with Fantasia. She's demanding child support from a married man who has other children. And they said now this guy has 3 jobs, but she still hasn't gotten the money because he's trying to pay the back support. And he's gonna find out he has other children.
Yeah.
That's not by his wife.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
so we're talking
That's a
about,
big
but we have situations in our communities where we have guys who have children spread out all over the city,
Or real close.
or real
To
close
one
to
another.
each other. And these women compete with each other for his
Oh,
love.
compete.
Yeah,
It's a pageant.
yeah. So, we gotta talk about solutions for this kind of thing. So you willing to come back?
Oh, yeah, they're already scheduled for the 27th.
You coming back?
Oh, yes.
Let God